Hamid, nice to have you back. All right. How are you? All right, just as a reminder, in 33 minutes, Ambassador James Kariuki, the Chargé d'Affaires of the United Kingdom of Great Britain, Northern Ireland, and President of the Security Council for the month of February, will be here to brief you on the program of work for the month of February, as he will preside over the council. Turning to the Occupied Palestinian Territory, I can tell you that we welcome the reopening of the Rafah crossing. As we have said before, civilians must be allowed to leave and return voluntarily and safely, as international law requires. Ultimately, essential humanitarian supplies must enter in sufficient quantities and with fewer restrictions through Rafah and all other crossings. Also today, WHO supported medical evacuations efforts from Gaza and The limited reopening of the crossing allowed some patients and companions to exit directly into Egypt, while others transited through the Israeli-controlled Kerem Shalom, Kerem Abu Salem crossing. The World Health Organization tells us that the last medical evacuation through Rafah dates back to May of 2024. And over the weekend, the UN system, including our colleagues from OCHA, UNDP, and the Department of Safety and Security, undertook an advance mission to assess road conditions, and the World Health Organization carried out technical missions to examine the compound area and access roads to ensure appropriate and dignified conditions. OCHA, together with several UN entities and NGO partners, has set up a reception area in the Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis. We also saw the reports of the violence over the weekend, and we're very concerned about the killing of civilians in Israeli airstrikes. And as again, we condemn all killings of civilians. And just to note, sorry, on the reception center, it is staffed with psychologists. At the Nasser Hospital, it's staffed with psychologists and protection specialists equipped with food, information, materials, and internet access to provide returning people with support. Our colleagues from the World Food Program and the UN Human Rights Office are among those operating the reception. Moving to Syria and the humanitarian front, we and our humanitarian partners continue to reach thousands of people in the northeast with critical assistance. Today, a convoy consisting of 24 trucks and one mobile clinic arrived in Ain al-Arab Kobani in Aleppo Governorate, delivering ready-to-eat food, health supplies, and fuel. This is the second convoy to reach the area in a week, as the city continues to face shortages of water, communications, medical supplies, and food, among other basic services, with communities relying on bakeries as the primary source of sustenance. Since the fighting broke out in Aleppo in December, more than 150,000 people have received humanitarian assistance. Yesterday, a 50-truck UN convoy carrying humanitarian aid from Damascus reached the city of Kemishli in Hasake Governorate. That's the third such convoy in a week. And on January 24th, more than 170,000 people had been forced to flee their homes. As of January 25th, more than 170,000 people have been forced to flee their homes across 178 communities across the northeast of Syria, mostly in al-Hasake Governorate. The vast majority of these people are women and children who faced heightened risk of violence and abuse. Nearly 3/4 of displaced families are living with host communities, putting additional strain on housing, water, basic services, and livelihoods in an already challenging situation for the hosts. While some have returned home, many remain displaced due to explosive ordnance, infrastructure that's damaged, winter conditions, and limited access to the most basic of essential services. And you saw that late on Friday, we issued a statement welcoming the agreement between the Syrian government and the Syrian Democratic Forces. The Secretary General appealed to all sides to work swiftly to ensure the implementation of the agreement, particularly with regard to the peaceful integration of northeast Syria. the rights of the Syrian Kurds, the safe, dignified, and voluntary return of the displaced, and the coming together in efforts to rebuild the country. Furthermore, he urges all sides to fully uphold their commitments to prioritize the stabilization of Syria as well as the wider region, and to ensure that civilians are protected and able to live safely in dignity, free from fear. Moving to Lebanon, yesterday morning, the Israeli Defense Forces informed our peacekeeping colleagues in southern Lebanon that they would be carrying out an aerial activity dropping what they, the IDF, described as a non-toxic chemical substance over areas near the Blue Line. The IDF said peacekeepers should stay clear of the area, forcing the suspension of more than a dozen activities. Normal operations, including patrols along the Blue Line, resumed only after more than 9 hours. UNIFIL supported the Lebanese army in collecting samples of what was dropped to test it for toxicity. We continue to remind the Israeli Defense Force that flights across the Blue Line into Lebanon are a violation of Resolution 1701. Any activity that may put peacekeepers and civilians at risk is of serious concern. We reiterate our call on all parties to fully comply with their obligations under said resolution, and that is 1701. And from Somalia, our colleagues at the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tell us that severe drought conditions continue to displace people across Somalia. According to authorities and our partners, nearly 500,000 people have now abandoned their homes since September of 2025. Families are on the move in search of water, in search of pasture for their livestock, and in search of food. Our humanitarian colleagues note that this is putting additional pressure on already overcrowded displacement sites. Authorities estimate that more than 4.6 million men, women, and children have been impacted by the drought. That's nearly 1 in 4 people in Somalia. Education has also been impacted, with 150 schools in the northern region closing or attendance declining as families migrate in search of water of livelihoods. This has forced more than 45,000 students, 45,000 young people, to drop out of school. We, along with our humanitarian partners, are providing food, cash, water, health, shelter, and nutrition assistance, but we're severely constrained by, you will have guessed it, funding issues. The situation is projected to get worse as rains are not expected until April. This is at the earliest. Widespread crop failure, which would compromise the summer harvest, is anticipated. This year, we and our humanitarian partners need $852 million United States dollars to support 2.4 million people in Somalia. And yesterday, we issued a statement, over the weekend, we issued a statement on Ethiopia regarding developments in the Tigray region, where renewed tensions and clashes have contributed to a worsening security environment. The Secretary General is deeply concerned about the potential impact on civilians and the risk of return to a wider conflict in a region still working to rebuild and recover from past tensions. The Secretary General calls on all parties to exercise restraint and to resolve differences through peaceful dialogue and measures aimed at rebuilding trust. He urges the full implementation of the permanent cessation of hostilities agreement and underscores the importance of safeguarding the gains made since 2022. Full statement is online. And a quick update from Madagascar, where our humanitarian colleagues tell us that tropical cyclone Fitia, which hit the country over the weekend, caused significant flooding and damage, particularly in Northwest District. According to preliminary reports from local authorities, at least 7 people died. More than 20,000 people have been displaced. There's also been extensive damage to homes, with more than 14,000 flooded, damaged, or destroyed. Some 250 classrooms have also been damaged or destroyed. Flooding also reported in the capital. The government is leading the response and has deployed food assistance to affected areas. For our part, our humanitarian partners are mobilizing available, though limited pre-positioned stocks to reach the most accessible areas. We're also looking on the food security front that they have currently no food stocks available to support the response. Access to the most affected districts, notably Swalala and Mitsinjo, remains severely constrained. Both areas are only accessible by air. As a result, an aerial assessment is planned for tomorrow to determine priority needs. Continued rainfall and rough sea conditions are constraining assessments and the delivery of humanitarian goods. And turning to Ukraine, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says attacks over the weekend killed more civilians and triggered additional electricity and heating disruptions as temperatures dropped to as low as minus 26 degrees centigrade, which is about minus 15 degrees Fahrenheit. Between January 30th and this morning, some 30 civilians were killed and around 90 injured, mainly in the regions of Dnipro, Zaporizhzhia, Kherson, and Donetsk. That's what local authorities are telling us. Yesterday, in the Dnipro region, drone strikes hit a bus carrying coal miners, killing over a dozen of them and injuring many others. Also yesterday, WHO reported that attacks in the city of Zaporizhzhia damaged 3 health facilities, including a maternity hospital that is being supported by the UN Population Fund. And it also injured staff and patients. The hospital suffered major damage, and the patients had to be relocated. In the central, western, and southern regions of Ukraine, including Kyiv, were hit by a massive blackout, which has also impacted heating and water supply. According to the local energy ministry, this was due to technical failures of the strained energy system, severe weather, as well as resumed attacks on energy facilities. Aid workers provided emergency shelter and protection assistance in Zaporizhzhia and Dnipro and supported heating centers across the country where people can warm up, have hot meals, and charge their devices. Our colleague Edem Worsornu, who, as you know, is OCHA's Director of Crisis Response, is currently in Ukraine. Yesterday, she was in Odessa and Mykolaiv to discuss humanitarian priorities, including winter assistance amid continued attacks on critical infrastructure with humanitarian partners and regional authorities. 2 new resident coordinators to announce. Our colleagues at the UN Development Coordination Office tell us that following their respective host government approvals, Leela Peters Yaya of Canada assumed her role as UN resident coordinator for Nepal. She started February 1st, which was yesterday? Or is today? Yesterday. Christine Weigand of Austria also assumed her role as resident coordinator in the Islamic Republic of Iran starting today, though she's currently here in New York. She'll be making her way to Tehran. Ms. Peters Yaya brings over 25 years of experience in public service and UN leadership. And Ms. Weigand brings extensive expertise in development cooperation, senior leadership roles with UNICEF, including service in Armenia, Turkmenistan, and Iran. Both coordinators will support development priorities for the Sustainable Development Goals in line with the Secretary General's vision to bolster coherence, partnership, and impact at the country level. Today is World Wetlands Day. Wetlands ranging from rivers, lakes, and marshes to mangroves, coral reefs, and human-made sites are vital ecosystems where water shapes life. They support biodiversity, protect the climate, and sustain the livelihoods of over 1 billion human beings worldwide. A little bit of a quiz for you today. We got some money in the bank, and as you know these days, every penny counts. This first country has an extensive forest coverage of over 70% of its land mass. It is one of only 3 carbon-negative countries in the world. This means that they absorb more carbon dioxide than they produce. Not Brazil. What?
Guyana?
No.
Suriname?
It's in Asia. Yes, Bhutan, Abdelhamid, very good. I was about to say, a very happy country, known for the happiness index. The next country is the world's 5th larger producer of coffee, and it is Africa's top producer of coffee. Yes, who said Ethiopia? Okay, there you go. Okay, Ethiopia. And finally, this country is home to the Veryovkina cave, discovered in 1968, is recognized as the world's deepest known cave, plunging over 2,200 meters deep. Nope. What? I would have pronounced that word a little better if it had been French. All right, it's nope, nope. All right, we're not gonna go list 193. We thank our friends in Tbilisi. The cave is in Georgia, so we thank our friends in Georgia, in Ethiopia, and Bhutan. If you want to know, Bhutan paid $31,815. Ethiopia $317,897. Georgia $286,332. We thank them for every dollar given to this organization. Abdelhamid.
Oh, thank you so much, really. I have two questions. One about the killing of 31 Palestinians on Saturday, and I was watching to see any statement just showing concern, showing some sadness, some response, but I didn't see. I know you mentioned something now in your briefing, but a separate statement for, doesn't worth a separate statement for killing 31 Palestinians?
Look, I think we have been very vocal, and I was just very vocal on condemning the killing of the Palestinians that we've seen in Gaza during the duration since a long time, frankly.
So killing 2 or 31 is just
I think I've answered you may analyze and criticize this statement, but I think I've answered your question.
Okay, my second question. Today, Médecins Sans Frontières had been banned completely from Gaza and the West Bank. Do you have any reaction to that?
I had not seen that report. Obviously, I think the Secretary General expressed his concern about 10 days ago at the push by the Israeli authorities to ban a number of international NGOs. Organizations like MSF and others are critical to the UN's humanitarian operation. We work with them hand in hand, and it is difficult to imagine us being able to do all the work we need to do without organizations like them.
Last, today also, UNRWA lowered the working hours from 37.5 to 30 and cutting down the salaries 20%. Any reaction to that also?
Well, it's not so much a reaction. As you know, UNRWA is facing extremely difficult financial situation. They're not getting the financial resources they need. Philippe Lazzarini cannot print money, right? He cannot create money out of nothing. So what are the options? Laying people off completely, depriving them of livelihoods, depriving those people that they work to support, or trying to trim working hours and salaries. It is not a good solution, but it is a better solution than than letting these employees go or not letting them do their work. I think Philippe, backed by the SG, has been extremely vocal in trying to get more resources from UNRWA, but he can only go to the bank with the money he has. He can't create money out of nothing. Farnoosh.
Thank you. Wondering if you have seen the flyer that's going around that Undersecretary General Tom Fletcher is going to be doing an event tomorrow, the Sudan Humanitarian Conference in Washington with Trump officials. It's an official White House event to raise money and gather pledges for Sudan. Was wondering if the SG supports this effort. Obviously, this comes after the U.S. has said adapt or die to the UN. And so anything you can say on how much the SG is behind this event, and if we should expect more events like this going forward, given the U.S.
Tom Fletcher is not freelancing, right? He's in Washington. One of the files he's discussing is Sudan. We've been working very closely with the Americans, but as we have with other countries, including countries in the region, to try to stop this conflict, to try to at least get humanitarian corridors, trying to get more resources. And I think the Secretary General made it clear here last week that, despite the issues well known with with the United States administration. We continue to cooperate on files of mutual interest. This is all being done in the interest of the Sudanese people.
And is this just going to be the new way of the U.S. being able to, I mean, the fundraising effort on behalf of OCHA in these types of events that are obviously very different from how previously?
Look, I think there will be different types of, there'll be some events like that, there'll be events in different forms. We are trying to get the resources we need so we can operate in the way we operate, meaning with the humanitarian principles in which we work. We're unbending in our principles, but we will work with whoever can support us in our work, and we're grateful for that support. Let's go to the other Associated Press, who did not win the quiz.
Completely different questions. First, has the Secretary General received any reactions to his letter to the 193 member nations?
I mean, I know he's been, member states have been in touch with him, but I think the letter, which I think you all saw by now, was pretty clear and direct and frank, to say the least.
But has he received any indication that member states are planning to take any action?
Look, I can't speak for member states. Obviously, I think we will see success when more checks are cashed, when member states agree to change some of the financial regulations which are outdated, outmoded, and clearly trap us in a kind of a death loop on budgetary issues.
And secondly, on the opening of the Rafah crossing, does the UN have anybody at the crossing helping, monitoring?
We're not doing monitoring. We're obviously, as I mentioned, we have people on the inside, on the Gaza side, to help Palestinians who come back, right? But we're not involved in any of the screening or the administrative procedures, as far as I know.
And do you have any indication of how many people crossed either way
No,
today?
I do not. I do not have those numbers. Gabriel.
Thank you, Steph. I have some follow-ups on the Lebanon incident that you mentioned in your remarks. Is the location where Israel dropped these so-called non-toxic chemicals on Israeli territory or Lebanese territory?
My understanding is they were north of the blue line.
So that'd be Lebanese territory.
North of the blue line.
Correct. Okay. And has this happened before?
I don't recall, but I don't recall everything, but this I don't recall.
And have you guys have any initial results of the testing
No.
to see if it?
No.
And last question on that is.
I mean, at least none that's been communicated to me.
And my last question is on this matter is, if Israel told the blue helmets to get out of the area, that probably means that they weren't dropping rose petals. It probably means that it was potentially something that is not healthy either to the environment or to a person. Do you agree with that statement?
Well, we're testing it for, we were not going to take chances on the safety of our peacekeepers. We're assisting the Lebanese armed forces in testing the material for toxicity. Yes, monsieur.
And what's the stated purpose of the chemicals? Do we know? Or?
No, we don't know. I mean, as soon as we know what that is, or at least we have the analysis from the Lebanese armed forces, hopefully we'll be able to share that with you.
Okay, and quick follow-up on the financial situation of the UN. What is the Secretary General making of President Trump's comments to Politico over the weekend that if the UN reaches out to him, he would be helping getting all the member states to pay up? And also he praised the UN as having a tremendous potential. So what are you making of these comments? How do they fit in?
We've seen and appreciated the comments before from President Trump saying we have tremendous potential. And I think as Secretary General said, we're working with the US on a number of issues. As for the payments, I mean, it's not a complicated solution. The solution is those who owe money should pay that money according to their treaty obligations. Linda, then Pam.
Thank you, Steph. My question is, you mentioned that there should be some change, you're implying that there should be a change in some of the financial procedures that are hamstringing the UN. Who takes the lead on that? Is that the General Assembly? Is that
Yeah, I mean, the Secretary General has proposed it, has mentioned it for quite a few times. If you'll remember, when he came into office, the UN had, the budget cycle of the UN was a 2-year budget, right? Which was difficult, not the right way to do business for a modern organization. The member states went along with his recommendation to move it to 1 year. He's made a number of recommendations which member states have not moved on. And this one, I think, is outlined in the letter and is outlined in his remarks to the GA, especially on budgetary issues, is really critical to get us out of this Kafkaesque situation, as he mentioned it.
So is it the fifth committee that has
Well,
to take the lead?
it goes through a fifth committee, but it's the member states as a whole. Yeah, yeah. Pam.
Steph, there are credible reports that the U.S. has asked Iran to restart talks, and there's some help from Turkey, Egypt, and Qatar to do that. Do you foresee, and is your sense that this would be totally separate from JCPOA? And are you hearing anything about JCPOA?
I mean, I can't, it's not a judgment for me to make. We, of course, support any efforts to diffuse tensions, especially tensions in that region, through engaged dialogue.
And so the UN is not in any way involved?
We are always ready to support any efforts to diplomacy. Yes, sir, and then Yvonne.
Thank you, Stéphane. I have two questions, both about the DOJ release of the Epstein files last Friday. A number of prominent Norwegian officials with tied to the UN were mentioned in the files. The Crown Princess of Norway, who's been a UN Goodwill Ambassador, Mona Juul, who was the permanent representative for Norway here and a member of the Security Council, and Terje Rød Larsen, who was a special envoy for many years. Does the UN have any comment on that?
Look, I think for us, the most important thing is that justice be done for the women who were abused by Jeffrey Epstein and the people around him. Mr. Larson no longer works for the United Nations and has not for some time. So I have no specific comment on that. As for the ambassador of former permanent representative of Norway, it's not for us to comment. Yvonne, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and also there was another exchange between the head of the World Economic Forum, Børge Brende, and Jeffrey Epstein, where they discussed the UN, and Epstein said Davos can really replace the UN, and Brende responded, exactly, we need a new global architecture. Does the UN agree that Davos can really replace the UN?
No. Yvonne Murray, RTE.
Thanks, Steph. You didn't really answer Edie's question about the reaction from the member states, the response to the SG's letter. Can you give us a few more details?
No, I mean, I think members, let me put it this way. The Secretary General has been very clear on the budgetary crisis for some time with member states. I think he went beyond in the letter. It was a letter meant to, if I put it diplomatically, to raise awareness. It was a letter meant to shake up. Let's see if it has the desired impact. But I've never seen a letter from a Secretary General to member states being so clear in the risks, the fundamental risks to this organization, should its member states, first of all, not live up to the obligations that they signed up to in signing a treaty, and also in not reviewing and adapting the financial rules and regulations to enable this this organization to work.
So you think that it's designed to shake things up or shake up, wake up perhaps the member states, but is it at risk of appearing like the boy who cried wolf? You know, is he exaggerating about financial collapse in order to shake things up?
I don't think. I mean, listen, Yvonne, you've been here for a number of years. You've seen the Secretary General. He's a pretty when he comes, he's pretty plain speaking. He's seeing the numbers, right? It's not I mean, he's not sitting on a stash of money and trying to get more money. We've seen the job losses. We've seen the job cuts. We've seen I mean, though it's not the regular budget, but we've seen the immense cuts on humanitarian development and that nobody was crying wolf, right? Food rations have been cut. Service to refugees have been cut. I mean, these are real life and death things. And I think the Secretary General is saying it as it is.
Okay, and so finally on that, financial collapse is a very real prospect.
I think there is a real prospect of this organization running out of money unless member states really make the changes they need to make. Alex.
Thanks, Steph. I have a question on the Secretary General's remarks on last Thursday, when he said that the principle of self-determination does not apply to the situations of Crimea and Donbass. I mean, we all know where the UN stands on the Russia-Ukraine war. What's wrong with the self-determination principle?
I think there's nothing wrong with the self-determination principle. It's a bedrock of the UN, but I think the Secretary General was very clear, to me at least, in speaking out on the situation in Ukraine and the need to uphold the territorial integrity of Ukraine as outlined, notably a number of General Assembly resolutions. Yes, Ahmed, behind you.
Thank you, Steph. Also on the Rafah crossing, credible reports are indicating that only about 50 to 150 Palestinians are being allowed to exit Gaza each day for urgent medical attention, despite there being, again, over 20,000 Palestinians in need of urgent life-saving medical care. That figure, of course, seems very low, so what are the Secretary General's immediate reactions?
I mean, our reaction is what we want to see is Palestinians being allowed to go into Gaza as they wish, Palestinians being able to leave Gaza as they wish, and for both humanitarian and commercial cargo to go in through Rafah.
If I may, though, Steph, yes. I'm sorry, just a quick
please.
follow-up. Just for clarification, does the Secretary General think 50 to 150 out of 20,000 is a low number each day?
Well, of course. I mean, it's a low number by any indication. This is the first day, right? So let's see how things work out. Namo.
Thank you, Stéphane. I have a couple follow-ups on Syria. You mentioned multiple convoys of aid have reached Kobani and other northeast cities. Given the scale of displacement and shortages, how sufficient is that? And are there gaps that remain uncovered?
Well, we would like to be able to get more aid in, and we keep trying to. Our efforts are focusing on that.
And lastly, you welcome the agreement between the Syrian government and the Syrian Democratic Forces. Does the UN foresee a formal role, especially in monitoring and observing this agreement to ensure that commitments are upheld, especially when it comes to civilian protection and the return of the displaced?
We do not have a formal role, but obviously we will continue to watch the situation very closely and speak out as needed. Yes, Gabriel, then we'll go. She withdrew her question. Gabriel, please.
Just to follow up, Steph, on Trump's interview with Politico over the weekend, he said, and he was speaking in the third person, he said, if they, meaning the UN, come to Trump, meaning him, and told him, I'd get everyone to pay up, just like I got NATO to pay up, all I have to do is call these countries, they would send checks within minutes. I just give that quote because he's basically asking the SG, give me a call. I'm serious in this question. Why doesn't the SG give him a call?
Look, for us, there's no need to discuss what are obligations, right? We continue to speak to the U.S. on a number of issues. The Secretary General does speak regularly to Ambassador Waltz, who's his primary point of contact, notably on budgetary issues. But I said this is not This is not a complicated advanced calculus problem. It's a pretty basic accounting issue. People owe money, that they have obligations, they need to pay it. That's how you solve the problem. On that note, I will solve my problem and leave and get you the ambassador.